So, the salesman or the salesperson's a little embarrassed, sits down, the manager goes on. And at this point, later, in the spirit of Mr. Knightley,
Mhm.
I counseled the manager, and I said, what does the salesperson know based upon your sarcastic remark? He says, well, he knows it's not good to come in late. I said, does he? Because you kind of laughed.
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, I'm so excited.
And all our listeners, both of them, are on the edge of their seats because this.
Hey, one of them is. I know one of them is.
Yeah.
that's the reason we're doing this.
That's the beautiful part of having the tiny audience, is that we can actually poll them.
Yeah.
It's not really a poll; it's a census. Yeah.
How'd you like it?
Yeah. What do you want us to talk about next? Yeah. Okay. No, we can do that. So the long-awaited Jane Austen episode.
Yes.
In
our second one, we've had at least one Pride and Prejudice episode, and it came up I guess it came up on the blog or maybe in the podcast, but one of our listeners let me know that he had purchased Pride and Prejudice and was digging in and reading and translating. So hat tip to you, Dave, if you're listening. And he was talking about how, it's a translation, it's English, but it's old English, older English. So, if you're not used to it, there's a gear shift that you kind of have to do. But as my wife has pointed out, that when you listen to it audibly, you get into the flow of it much more quickly. So if you can get an audiobook, the library, your library has a free app that I guarantee you has every Jane Austen book available for download. It's, past copyright protection or whatever, I guess. So, so there are ways to do this where it's easier, but yeah, we just find little nuggets in Jane Austen that, Madame Austen had a really good eye for looking at how humanity really worked. And so there's a passage that just has some absolute perfection of some of the things that we talk about. Just what she's painted in the book is so clear to what we see day to day in real life that I had to bring it.
You had to bring it. So I kind of feel like when I was a little child and my mom would take me to the women's clothing store. I'd be like, well, yeah, part of this is intriguing, but a whole lot of me doesn't want to be here.
This has been the ongoing dialogue you and I have had for about a week now.
Oh yes, definitely.
So let me make you feel a little better about that.
Okay.
2 times in college, I can remember watching a movie and having all the women in the room get physically closer to me as the movie proceeded. One of them was Jeff Goldblum's remake of The Fly, because it had a scary scene.
A classic. Multiple scary scenes.
To this day, I was coming off a bad breakup, and Amy and Kelly, if you're out there, bless you. They said, Mark, we want to watch a movie with you, and that's what we watched, and I felt better about myself. I want you to know that.
Oh yeah. To this day, I will not get in a teleporter.
Stop. Have you seen the GIF of Jeff Goldblum reclining, shirtless, and the GIF has made him breathing up and down, and it has Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park leaning on his own body, like breathing. It's beautiful. I'll you know what? It will go in this episode. We will put it in the show notes.
Oh Lord.
Anyway, the other one was Emma. There was a Gwyneth Paltrow version of Emma in the 90s. And this scene sticks out to me actually to this day. And so I went back and found it because another friend was saying, you do that workplace book club. You ought to do one about sarcasm in that one scene. And as soon as she said it, I remembered exactly how the scene went, because the feedback, the negative feedback that the gentleman gives Emma, the lady, is badly done, badly done. And I thought, ooh, that is harsh. Badly done. Ouch. But in the scene, it really plays out. So I've got a scene here that I'll walk through. I'm not going to read a whole bunch of it, but I'll describe the scene. And I guarantee you, Mike Marshall, that you will have at least 4 things that ping for you that will fly off the shelves of this women's clothing store, so to speak. So
I am ready to write the pings down.
Okay.
And
All
just,
right. So
and just to let our audience know that sarcasm is not just a random topic.
100%.
It is one we discuss very often, that managers often deploy in the workplace.
That's right.
To little or negative effect. So
right.
This is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and this is the Jane Austen approach to it.
This is the Jane Austen approach. Very well said. So the story, you don't need to know much about the novel. Emma is described early on as a triple threat. She's handsome, clever, and rich. So she's got the brains, she's got the beauty, and oh, by the way, she's wealthy. And she's at I think the scene is sort of a picnic, if you will. There's an outing, and they're all sitting around, and there's a family friend, Miss Bates, who's a little on the foolish side and says too much, and she's prattling on, and Emma, who is clever, just makes this casual whip smart insult, and it takes Miss Bates a minute to catch it, and then when she does, she blushes and sort of starts apologizing. The scene in the movie is heartbreaking. You can see this woman just so embarrassed and mortified when she realizes she's being made fun of, and she sort of tries to smooth it over and be pleasant about it. Miss Bates says, "I must make myself very disagreeable, or she would not have said such a thing to an old friend." So she's very aware that she's been hurt. Well, later on, Mr. Knightley finds Emma by herself and takes that as his opportunity and says, I once more must speak to you as I have been used to do. He says, I'm taking advantage of the fact that we're friends here, and that we used to have a pretty personal relationship, because I need to tell you something. He says, I cannot see you acting wrong without saying something to you. How could you be so insolent in your wit to a woman of her character, age, and situation? That's his complaint. How could you be so insolent in your wit to a woman of her character, age, and situation? And Emma blushes, tries to laugh it off. She says, "Oh, how could I help but say it? Nobody could have helped it." And then she says, "Oh, it wasn't very bad." And then she says, I don't even think she understood me. And Mr. Knightley assures Emma, "Oh, yes, very much she did understand. In fact, that's all she's talking about right now. And she's honoring you in what she says, that she just is so appreciative that you would pay her attention when her society must be so unpleasant. Like, isn't she so nice that she would have me remain in her presence when I'm such an annoyance with my behavior?" Like, that's how she's treating you. She's absolutely giving you honor when you gave her nothing but insult. And Emma, is starting to backpedal here and says, I know there is not a better creature in the world, but you must allow that what is good and what is ridiculous are most unfortunately blended in her. In other words, but she is ridiculous. I mean, what I said is true. And he has a very long answer to that. And I'm going to try to shortcut it here. Mr. Knightley basically says, if she were a wealthy woman, well, maybe it would be a pass. If she were your equal, maybe it'd be a pass. But she's fallen so far in her situation. She's an older woman. There are all these reasons why she's lesser than you in the situation, and you took advantage of that. And so he says, it was badly done indeed. And he says, what's more, some people are going to be guided by how you treated her. They're going to look to you and how you treated her and use that to guide how they treat her. So he says, after this big long speech, he basically says, I will tell you truths while I can, satisfied with proving myself your friend by very faithful counsel. So in other words, I know this was difficult, but if I'm going to be a faithful friend to you and give good counsel, I have to tell you this stuff. And it's interesting. I've got a little excerpt and worksheet that I'm going to make available for download on the website and all that. I don't get into what happens afterwards, but basically Emma realizes after Mr. Knightley walks away that she's been so ashamed that she's been turning her head, and she realizes, oh no, Mr. Knightley doesn't think I'm ashamed. He thinks I'm sulking. And it's too late. Mr. Knightley is pulled off. And of course, don't worry, Emma saves the day and she comes back a better person the next day and fixes things a little bit. But that's the scene. That's Mr. Knightley gets to that speech, says his piece, and he's gone. So I saw in this negative feedback delivered by two different people. I guess that was the thing that caught me, that Emma gives some negative feedback to Miss Bates about being talkative and foolish, overly talkative and foolish. And then Mr. Knightley gives Emma the feedback of, hey, that was uncalled for. That was badly done. And here's why. So did you get some things to ping off of, Mike, from all that?
Oh yeah. There's so much in here. The first thing that struck me was that Emma's lack of empathy.
Yeah.
To not recognize that, this person's had some struggles and they're not at the same social class, that they're no longer there. They once were, but they're no longer there.
Right.
And not recognizing that the fact that you can never win by picking a fight with somebody smaller than you.
Yeah.
It never works. If you beat them up, you've picked on somebody smaller than you. And if they happen to beat you, now somebody smaller than you has bested you.
Right.
Twice as embarrassing.
The way you lose.
Yeah. You're never going to win when you pick a fight with somebody who doesn't have as much power as you do.
Yeah.
When you called it, and I'm not sure if it's in the word, but yeah, you called it an insult.
Yeah. She basically is it would be too complicated to have to parcel together here on the podcast, but she basically makes it very clear, like, you talk too much. You talk too much, and says it in a way that she doesn't quite catch because it's sarcasm. She says it sarcastically, like she's saying something very solemn and meaningful, but really what she's doing is making fun of the fact that this woman talks too much. And so that's that sarcasm thing, right? I once had an employee who thought that sarcasm should be banned in the workplace, and the boss of this person said, "You want to know why? Because he doesn't get the joke." And
right, he's Sheldon Cooper.
Yeah, like you miss those cues, and man, it feels so bad to be isolated, right? To be on the outside of that inside joke. Man, I love sarcasm, and I don't know that a car dealership could function without sarcasm. I kind of wonder, but man, it's hard.
I always preach in these situations that peer-to-peer sarcasm is okay.
Yeah.
If there's a high level of trust, it can get you in trouble, but if you got to do it,
you have to be careful.
And in your Jane Austen example, you had unequal people. They weren't peers, and so it doesn't work. So if you're a manager and you're using sarcasm with your team members, it doesn't work. If you're the manager and you're talking to one of your managers using sarcasm, it doesn't work. But I can talk to people who are my same organizational or power level.
Yeah.
And then I don't even recommend that, but yeah, it's if your relationship has gotten to that point, then
well, and you make that's a really good point about, if you're at the same level, and that doesn't necessarily mean paycheck, or organizational role, right?
Mhm.
There are some people that are gatekeepers and community leaders in an organization who are, low level, and their sarcasm can be really detrimental to people, in other areas. So I think you're spot on. There's all sorts of ways that people might be beneath you, quote unquote, that would get you in trouble with sarcasm. So even when you think you're an equal, you may not be. Yeah.
Yeah. You make a good point, and also from mental capabilities. In your example,
Yeah.
do they have the mental capacity, the I don't know if it's emotional intelligence, but the ability to recognize and partake in the repartee, the give and take of sarcasm.
Right.
So yeah. Another big takeaway from this is the fact that Emma, as a person of status in her world, is now modeling behavior that could be emulated by the others.
Yeah.
And so she's setting this example that it's okay to pick on this person.
Yep.
It's okay to to ridicule them, even in a sarcastic manner.
Yeah. And we know this, right? Culture trickles downhill. The
Mhm.
fish stinks from the head down. When you do that, you're saying that this is allowed, and culture is what we allow. So you have just made this part of culture. When this becomes a thing that's regularly done, it's part of culture. If it's not, you need to at least ask for forgiveness once it happens, right? Or you have made it part of culture. So this is, it's she does it very lightly. It's lightly done by her. It's just sort of a casual remark because she's so clever. But Mr. Knightley's point at the end of his speech is, you're setting a tone here, and there are people watching you.
And he, it goes back to the insult in your wit,
Yeah.
and then her defense is so poor.
Yeah.
How could I resist? How could I help it?
Right.
It was, you hear managers say that, he just teed it up. I
Yep.
had to smack it out of the park.
Yep.
If you're gonna do this or say that, I can't help myself but respond sarcastically.
Right. Well, it's like you're saying you don't have any power.
Mhm.
Like I just, there was no other choice for me. I had to be a slave to this one thought that went through my head, and I just had to say it. And it makes me think of you remember Cartman's triangle, the drama triangle.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
you're a rescuer, or you're a victim, or you're a persecutor, and often you start going around that ring of all three items. You rescue people, and then you get really frustrated that you're always having to rescue them. And so now you're the victim because I'm always having to rescue them. And now I'm so mad that I'm the victim. Then I start persecuting them and saying, they suck. I just can't stand the way they. And that's really where Emma has gotten to. She's saying, I'm just such a victim here of her silliness that I just had to say something and persecute her about it. It's ridiculous,
Yeah. Oh, and we all have that as somebody who's a recovering sarcastic person.
Yeah.
I'm working on it, but yeah, sometimes I might have like 8 to 10 really good ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just like the Terminator. I'm just scrolling back and forth, trying to pick the one that would be, the juiciest to just unleash at that moment.
Yep.
And to not use any of them.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes I walk away and I just say them to myself, just because I know how good it would have felt in the short term, but how detrimental it would be in the long term.
Right.
But man, yeah, keeping those in, reining those in, whew, man, yeah, that hurts.
Well,
It's almost
and
physically
you
painful.
bring up the second defense that she gives, that like you saying them to yourself. Sometimes you're going to say, yeah, that wasn't that bad. And that's what Emma says. This is not so very bad. It's not so very bad. I don't even know that she heard me. She probably didn't even get it. And the man, I mean, I know this sounds trite, but words really do matter. They just really do matter.
Well, it was, as I was a recovering sarcastic, I had great intervention help from a good friend of ours, Pamela Cole.
Ooh.
And Yeah, Pamela's, she asked me one time, she says, do you know the Greek root of the word sarcasm?
Hmm.
And I said, no, nobody knows that except you. Like normal people, no, don't know that. And she said, yeah, it comes from the Greek word, and I can't pronounce it correctly, sarcasian, something
I
along
don't even
those
know.
lines.
Yeah.
And so if you look up the Greek definition of the word sarcasian, it means to tear flesh like a dog. Like,
Well, that's
ow.
pleasant.
Yeah. So
So it is very bad, is what you're saying.
yeah. So yeah. Yeah. If you attack an old friend, is what was said here, right? The manner in which you attack them is the equivalent of a dog ripping flesh from the person
Man,
in an aggressive manner.
what an image.
And so Pamela would always say that, yeah, sarcasm, it wounds
Yeah.
and it confuses.
Yeah.
And so now I've torn out a piece of your flesh, and often sarcasm is done with an audience,
Yep.
and we know that is the worst.
Yep.
So now I've embarrassed you, I've torn some flesh from you in front of your other people, so that magnifies the slight. And now I've confused you,
Yeah.
because I don't know if the behavior that you're being sarcastic about is something that really bothers you,
Right.
or you're just think it's kind of amusing.
Yep. And
I don't know.
so go back to our episodes on crucial conversations. We had a series on crucial conversations, and we talked about the problem of silence and violence, right? And man, sarcasm sometimes is silence, because I'm just going to leak out a little sarcasm instead of telling you how I really feel. And sometimes sarcasm is the dog tearing flesh. It's, I'm going to let you have it in front of other people, and I don't care if you're left confused. I'm going to attack, and make you look ridiculous. It can be really damaging. It can be really damaging, and it so it is not so very bad. Actually, it's the other way around. It's very bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I've wounded and confused you. Great example. I was at a sales meeting. Managers running the sales meeting. We're about 10 minutes into it. Salesperson walks in, and the manager goes with the always classic, "So nice of you to join us." Always a crowd pleaser, a go-to, standard in any sarcastic repertoire. Just always at the tip of your tongue. So the salesman or the salesperson's a little embarrassed, sits down. The manager goes on, and at this point, later, in the spirit of Mr. Knightley, I counseled the manager, and I said, what does the salesperson know based upon your sarcastic remark? He says, well, he knows it's not good to come in late. I said, does he? Because you kind of laughed. So is he, he's got to assume that he's somewhere in the spectrum of, this kind of is slightly annoying to the sales manager, but he really doesn't care, to one more of these and I could be let go.
Right.
Yeah,
somewhere in between, maybe
somewhere in that continuum is where he's thinking he is. And so you wounded him because you embarrassed him in front of all the people.
Yep.
And now you confused him because he doesn't know if this is a lighthearted offense or if he's one step away from getting fired if he keeps doing it.
Yeah.
So now he's wounded and he's confused.
Yep.
And in your head, you thought it was perfectly clear what you were wanting. In his head, he has no idea and he's hurt.
Yeah, that's a great example. And it's just what I'm basically hearing you say is that this doesn't actually move the ball forward. Sarcasm is not a way to communicate something that is an expectation on your part. There's no way to use it in that way because it's too unclear where you're going with it, or it's going to be so hurtful that nobody's going to be able to hear you in the first place. So this will not get you to where you want to go.
Oh yeah. And there's a super simple test to see if you're using sarcasm too much or someone else is. So that you're using sarcasm too much when you ask a team member to do something and they look at you and go, Are you serious? Okay, so now you really want me to do this? This is you're not joking. No, I need you to go, pick up this car. I need you to
Yep.
write the TPS report or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And so if you find occasionally your team members, your people are going, okay, do you really mean that? You serious? Okay, really? Then
Yep.
you've probably used sarcasm to the extent now they have no idea when you are or are not using it. And now they're just immensely confused, even when you're not deploying this tool.
Well, I love that. And I want to sort of end this on a positive note that, we're sort of down on sarcasm, but notice that we're up on feedback. We are sarcasm is bad feedback, but Mr. Knightley, goes back again and again and says, this is important for me being a friend to you and giving you good counsel as a friend. It's important for how this looks downstream to the people around you. And it's important to this woman who is lower than you in status, who you've hurt very badly. So the fact that he's willing to do this is because he's faithful. And I think, that again, we could talk about crucial conversations and our material there, but just the idea that, what do I want for this person that I'm giving the feedback to? What do I want for the salesman who comes in late? Man, I want him to succeed. I want him to be able to get everything he can out of the sales meetings. I want him to be able to be disciplined enough and organized enough that he shows up on time and executes and makes a bunch of money and supports his family. And, you could spend a lot of time that's pretty fruitful thinking about all the things you want there. And as Crucial Conversation says, if that is true, how would I behave? I don't think you'd behave with sarcasm. You'd behave in a way that just shows caringly that you're willing to have some direct feedback to this person, like Mr. Knightley did. So,
oh, definitely. What's that saying? A good friend will tell you what you want to hear.
Yep.
Excuse me. And a great friend will tell you what you need to hear.
That's right.
And so Mr. Knightley is being a great friend.
That's exactly right.
And he knows it's uncomfortable, and he calls upon the relationship that's been built over time as the currency in which he can spend in order to have this conversation.
I think that's exactly what's happening in this scene. He is proactively doing this, and he doesn't have to, but he chooses to because it's the right thing to do for the other person and the other people involved. It's a thing of beauty.
It is. It is. And like you said, it's written in the Old English, and it's always fascinating to hear how they brought these conversations to light, and the words and the phrasing and the manner in which they did so.
Yeah, the words are different, the culture's a little different, but man, they are humans. I mean, Jane Austen had an eye for what was really a human. So I think you're really going to benefit when you read things like this. And as you and I have talked, I'm more and more convinced that we need to be doing more of that. So I guess be warned, there may be more episodes like this. Or Mike may tell me, go have a second like breakaway podcast. Could you do that? And then we can get more practical on this podcast. It's hard to say what's going to happen, but we're going to do more stuff like this, I think.
Oh, no. Like I told you, when my mom dragged me into the women's clothing store, I did find parts that were intriguing. Yeah, I'm intrigued and excited to be along on this journey.
It's like the end of the scene on White Christmas where they're on the train and they've just been dressed up like women, and they were in drag doing a show, and he can't find his money, and Bing Crosby says, "What'd you do? Leave it in your snood?" I had to look that one up. Just go look it up, people. It's fine. It's not dirty or anything. Anyway. Hey, let's let John Wolfe talk maybe now. I don't know.
Now that you told him it's not dirty, nobody's going to look it up.
And there you have it. Another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.